You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 Gov.biz Radio, a CBS station.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. You're listening to us on CBS radio station gov.biz 1580 AM in the Washington, D.C. area, and or on the web, WMClive.com, where you can also find links to podcasts of previous shows. We want to hear from you. Call the comment line 347-903-WMC1, or you can tweet us hashtag WMC Live, or you can email us at womensmediacenterlive@gmail.com. Lots of different ways. This is a special edition of Women's Media Center Live. We had planned a special pre-election show tied to the election coverage piece, the excellent piece featured on the Women's Media Center website, that's womensmediacenter.com, a piece on how election coverage is falling short on reporting issues of particular importance to women, written by Crystal Brent Zook. And you can still go and access that piece. We were also planning some really interesting guests, which we can still offer you, but Superstorm Sandy kind of got in the way of our well-made plans. We can still offer you some of these wonderful guests. One is the feminist strategist and message maven. One is, wait for it, a conservative Republican activist. Yeah, pick yourself up off the floor. And one is the Congresswoman who takes no prisoners when it comes to people's rights. But first, we have to acknowledge Hurricane Sandy and the devastation in the New York area, and in fact all up and down the coast. So instead of behind the headlines this week, instead of fighting words, instead of verbal karate, I've written another letter from Ground Zero. This is Letters from Ground Zero number 4. 12 years ago, in the aftermath of 9/11, I wrote 3 letters from Ground Zero. To my surprise, they went viral on the internet. Today, my country, my city, and on a human level, those of us who live in the lower part of Manhattan, are reeling from a new blow. So this is the 4th letter. I'm reaching out to you from a makeshift studio in a storm-devastated New York City. Superstorm Sandy was a first for us New Yorkers. We are a notoriously arrogant bunch, tough talkers with tender hearts who are used to surviving tourists, terrorists, and even regular presidential motorcades. We don't do tornadoes like Kansas, though we've actually had a few lately. We don't do earthquakes like California, though recently several have surprised the hell out of us. We don't do floods like Mississippi or levee surges like New Orleans or windstorms like the Great Plains, though Sandy managed all 3. We do traffic. Hurricane Sandy changed that. Oh, well, not the arrogance, I'm afraid, but the we don't do part. Words like historic, unprecedented, and catastrophic are being used. People, including political officials, are walking around just stunned, stammering, "Never seen anything like this." Just why they haven't, why none of us has. Well, more about that a little later. For now, a few words about those officials. I'm going to say something you very, very rarely hear me say, so pay attention. It's about men. It's about some powerful men. It's praise. I am not fond of billionaire New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg, who stole himself an extra term illegally, and who, lots of other not good things. I have little affection for New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, a decent enough state attorney general, a serviceable HUD secretary in the Clinton cabinet, and a not bad governor, but look who he followed, Pataki, and then the brief, mortifying reign of Eliot Spitzer. But he's always lacked the vision, the daring, and the eloquence of his father, Mario Cuomo. And I definitely do not like Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey, whose so-called lovable bluntness has for me the adorability of a buzzsaw. But here's the thing. Think London during the World War II Blitz. Adversity brings out the best in many people. These expert political cynics put aside the spin for once. They exhibited professionalism, efficiency, cooperation, straight talk, unegocentric praise of others, and round-the-clock, on-the-case devotion to actually doing the job we elected them to do. I find their actions admirable, even, I admit, moving. Furthermore, the way the system has been working, city government, state government, regional cohesion, and federal support, more than admirable, more than moving. I keep thinking, this is the way power should work, this is the way government should work, and this is why we do need government, not as the down-with-all-government folks, the neo-anarchists of the right or the left would have it. I do confess that I especially enjoy it when Republican Chris Christie, who has attacked President Obama in the past as being highly ineffective, gratefully applauds Obama's leadership in sending in the National Guard and gives high fives to the president for declaring New Jersey a disaster area. No jokes about it always having been one anyway, please. I confess bemusement when Romney and Ryan are caught doing staged soup kitchen volunteer service campaign photo ops, while Obama not only looks but acts presidential, phoning governors, touring disaster areas, sending in the Army Corps of Engineers, and releasing onto the afflicted states a restructured federal emergency management agency so efficient that, good grief, conservative pals admit it makes the Bush-Katrina FEMA look even more pathetic than it did when George W. praised it so embarrassingly. But reactions of my lower self aside, let's look at New Yorkers in a moment like this. Those first responders, cops and firefighters and sanitation workers and EMS crews, they're magnificent. And the lifeguards and coast guards who risk their lives plunging into 30-foot swells to rescue morons who insist against all warnings on surfing in a perfect storm, because being sensible would be like a drag, dude. Or to rescue coastal or island residents who decide to sit it out because evacuating would mean more spoiled groceries, for God's sake. New Yorkers suddenly check on their neighbors, bring each other food, pause their cars and wave each other on first at intersections where traffic lights have no electricity, so it otherwise would be every car for itself. They recharge strangers' cell phones from their laptops or e-readers. They clump amusingly in hot spots on street corners like outside a shuttered Starbucks, clustering as if they were bees around a bloom furry with thick pollen, sending and receiving backed-up emails, tweets, texts, and calls. They offer apartments in non-affected areas. They offer electric socket use, showers with hot water. That's a great concept. They offer car services and spare rooms or beds or cots or sofas or sleeping bags. The camaraderie is real. The goodwill and spirit of wry adventure and sense of the absurd, they're real. The empathy, the offers of help, real. Tears sting my eyes as I write these notes, not of sentimentality, but of longing, for this to become our normal state of being human, for there to be a realization that we are, all of us, the species, the planet, truly is in a state of grave catastrophe. So if adversity is what's required to inspire us to heights of sanity, fairness, and cooperation, the crisis is already here. Governor Cuomo, to my surprise, was the first person I heard on my little shortwave battery radio dare say something I haven't yet heard from any other official or any media reporter or pundit. He said, "When once-in-a-century storms come twice in 1 year, that gets my attention. This isn't political. This is fact. We can't ignore or deny this any longer." Good for you, Andrew, the son finally finding his own voice and guts, naming it. At this writing, 15 New Yorkers have died, and more deaths are anticipated. 15 is a small number in the grand scheme of statistics, but not to those 15 people. each unique one of whom embodied a universe of consciousness, hope, anger, love, laughter, grief, and memories, forever gone now. I want to run through the darkened streets crying, "People, this is what we mean. It's called climate change. We're not Cassandras or Chicken Littles. The West Side Highway is under 6 feet of water. Some subway stations are flooded up to their ceilings. People's homes, businesses, lives have been threatened, ruined, destroyed. I'm fortunate. This is my way, these words of running through the streets crying. But each of you who hears or reads this is likely a self-selecting, proud member of the choir I'm preaching to. So we, all of us, need to take it out further, to people not in the choir, triaging nobody and writing no one off, since we're all stuck with this small, fragile, endangered, exquisite blue planet that's stuck with us. I'm fortunate, too, because I have friends to stay with until the power comes back on, have places to go to recharge my laptop and iPad and iPhone so I can write these notes. By the way, the reliance on these devices and on the extended brain attachment that's Google, and on email and Twitter and Facebook is as addictive as we feared, not to mention the sudden lack of television news images. Deprivation of these now daily devices that are so lacked and hungered for by most of the world is quite a consciousness raiser. I feel amputated, bereft, and somewhat Neanderthal. I'm also fortunate because I work with a team of extraordinary women, the team of Women's Media Center Live, who, while dealing with the wake of the storm in their own Washington, D.C. and environs area, have been relentless in their work to make possible what you are hearing, to find ways, invent ways to make this show go on. That they've done so sometimes in the middle of the night, or from at home when unable to get to the office, or without any sleep, and done so in a manner at once humorous, smart, loving, and skillful, makes this work, for me, without hyperbole, an honor. Yeah, I'm fortunate. My home is still intact. Trees in the garden held, though they lost enough boughs and branches to make the garden look like the black and white part of The Wizard of Oz before the concussive Technicolor starts. I can report to you that taking cold showers is indeed bracing, and it also qualifies one for a speed shower record. I can also report that it's a challenge to live by candlelight, however romantic, because when the pool of illumination is so small, consequently, so are one's perceptions. And I can report that there is just so much frozen spinach and homemade chicken soup stock one can consume before gagging. But all these are infinitesimally minor problems compared with the real stuff. The real stuff? For one thing, this was, people say, not a man-made disaster like 9/11, but a natural disaster. I beg to differ. This was a man-made disaster, fluorocarbon-made and fracking-made and Agent Orange-made and gas-belching ozone layer perforating-made. The real stuff? You know, the usual. Human suffering, human empathy. Now New York begins to understand in the pore and at the bone how Manila acts with its regular fetid floodings, how Fukushima felt, how post-Katrina New Orleans smelled. Yet we can do something about it, not only rebuild, but change the how and the what we rebuild, the why and the who of the rebuilding. Which brings me back to the original theme we had planned for this show. Every election, we say, this is the most important election in history. Well, this time it really, really is. 2 imminent retirements on the Supreme Court and the choice of who fills those vacancies, that issue alone defines justice in this nation for the next quarter century. The soul of our republic is at stake, as is our labor, our education, the shapes and shades of our very bodies, our wombs, our pigmentation, our utterance, our minds. Nor is it just us. I wish the whole world could vote in U.S. elections, since those elections disproportionately affect the whole world. Men their votes and nothing more, women their votes and nothing less. That was a slogan from the 19th century women's suffrage movement. a protracted struggle that took 100 years and cost women their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor, in the words of the Constitution's framers, who had ignored women. In fact, all but a very few of those women had any fortune whatsoever, and their honor, their reputations were shredded by unladylike activism. Many suffered prison time and lost their health due to hunger strikes and tortuous intubated forced feedings. Several women lost their lives. But as Susan B. Anthony prophesied on her deathbed, failure is impossible, and the suffragists won. Won is the operative word here, remember. When somebody misspeaks of a time when they gave women the vote, set them straight about the one part. I think of those women in that struggle often, especially of Anthony and the great Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Stanton, who in sepia daguerreotype smiles out at us, a dimpled, plumpish, elderly woman. She lived past 80, in a lacy shirtwaist and full hooped skirt, tidy side-curl ringlets of white hair above each ear. Stanton's radical vision, unsatisfied with the suffrage fight, also focused on the institution of slavery, on economics, on reactionary ways of child-raising, on the institution of marriage, though she was married, but she refused to promise to obey, and she was the mother of 7 children, too. And she focused on the church. Wow, she confronted religion openly when she published the Women's Bible, giving her friend and colleague, the more pragmatic Anthony, periodic bouts of indigestion. These women believed that the vote could change everything, and from their perspective, one can see that it might have. To this day, there are numerically a majority of female citizens in this country and almost all others. Theoretically, we could bring about world revolution simply, swiftly, nonviolently, even concertedly at the ballot box. Anthony's vision was of women marshaling our power as a block vote. Hoard your vote, she counseled. But although almost a century later, we have a sturdy gender gap, we've really been at this only half a century, since the 1960s. At least 50 more years to go. Might as well get started. Use these words as your own. Share them with someone. Help somebody get to the polls. Argue persuasively with those too disillusioned to vote, or too bitter, or too pure. There's a far bigger storm than Sandy looming, but it's one you and I can maybe, just maybe, avert. So we're reaching out. The remarkable women with whom I have the privilege of working, and me, sending you this message in a bottle from a makeshift studio in a storm-devastated New York City, the 4th of the letters from Ground Zero. Election Day is coming. Carry yourself as one who would save the world, because you will. Celinda Lake is one of the nation's foremost experts on electing women candidates and on framing issues to women voters. She's known for her groundbreaking research on women voters and has helped elect numerous female candidates, including Senator Barbara Mikulski, former Arizona Governor Janet Napolitano, Blanche Lincoln, the senator from Arkansas, etc., etc. She also works for Nancy Pelosi, the first female Speaker of the House. Celinda Lake was the pollster on the first successful effort to defeat an anti-gay marriage initiative in Arizona. She's been called the super strategist, or better yet, the feminist godmother. Here's Celinda Lake. Welcome, Celinda, to Women's Media Center Live. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you very much, and it's delightful to be with you, and thank you for all the important work you do.
Well, right back at you. I'm so glad you're on our side, or we're on your side. We've been drowning recently in polls and polls of polls, and until people get so confused by which is what that they get turned off entirely. One of the things that's made me cranky is that the gender gap, which you and I know still exists and is as strong as it ever was, is now being poo-pooed as narrowing, not existing. Women aren't really that different from. To talk a little bit about that.
Well, as you said, for 20 years or more, we had the denial of the gender gap, and then it was so obvious, and women were electing so many Democrats and progressives that then they had to acknowledge it historically, but now they want to deny it right now.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is their deeds belie their words, because if you look at the Romney campaign, for example, what they're doing is totally targeting women voters, and they have ads with moms about the deficit and talking about getting the economy going for women. And if you weren't worried about the gender gap, why would you be doing that? So obviously it is, the women's vote is the critical vote that people are targeting in this last days of the campaign. And women are the most volatile voters. They decide later. They tend to pay more attention to negative advertising, even though they dislike it more. And they are the ones who go back and forth at the end of the campaigns. Both presidential campaigns are targeting women voters, and both presidential campaigns are targeting them on the economy. The Obama campaign is also targeting them on women's issues and the war on women, which includes birth control and equal pay and funding for Planned Parenthood, and a whole host of issues, the definition of rape, a whole host of issues that I think people thought very surprisingly are playing a role in this campaign.
Tell me something, because it mystifies me. You say that women sometimes are the volatile voters, and they they don't make up their minds till the last minute, or they go back and forth or respond to negative advertising even though they dislike it. Why do we know why that is? Is it because women are robbed of self-confidence in patriarchy?
We know some of it. For one thing, women they're so swamped in their lives, they tend to get their information later. They also really look for what candidate is going to do something for my family and which candidate really understands my family. And that's a more thoughtful judgment. I mean, men often are of the mood, I just think it's a good day when government hasn't done anything bad to me. Women are saying, no, government and business and everyone have to be in partnership here. We have to use government as a safety net. We have to use government to fix some of these problems. But we also have to have the right approach. And so, rightly so, in these tough times, they would go back and forth. They also now lean Democratic permanently, although there are many groups of women who don't vote Democratic. But they also want to see from the Democrats, don't take my vote for granted. Ask for my vote.
Yeah.
And show me what you're going to do for me and my family.
Yeah. Where I come a cropper is that, you know, the basic right of reproductive freedom is such an economic issue as well as a human rights Gesundheit,
totally,
as well as a human rights issue that it mystifies me how that can ever be an ambivalence. Then once you're pro-choice and then you haven't made up your mind, it really confuses me. But
well, women are weighing a lot of things, and sometimes women have thought that the choice issue was protected. So, for example, in 2010, we did not see pro-choice women particularly vote the choice issue because they thought it was protected by Obama, Michelle Obama. And yet they've been stunned at what has happened in their state legislatures and their governorships and in the Congress with so many truly out-of-the-mainstream bills with vaginal sonograms and defunding Planned Parenthood and redefining rape and not providing abortions to protect a woman's health.
Personhood.
These are all things that are just way out of the mainstream.
Yeah, the personhood of the cell. Yeah. Tell me, in taking a closer look at women voters, what does your research show, your latest research on women voting decisions disaggregated by demographics? In other words, unmarried versus single, suburban versus urban, economics, ethnicity, region. Can you give us some of those breakdowns?
Sure. So one of the things we're seeing is that women overall were more undecided, and they are now moving more toward Obama. And in the most recent poll that we just released today, they were voting 11 points Democratic for Obama, and they gave him at least a 3-point advantage, and in some cases upwards of 27-point advantage on every major issue, including the deficit. So women are moving back toward the president. In battleground states, they're still more up for grabs. But women are not monolithic, as you say, and married women vote more Republican. Unmarried women vote Democratic, but they don't always turn out to vote. So the groups of voters who vote Democratic, women of color, unmarried women, younger women, millions and millions of them did not show up at the polls in 2010, and we have to get them back in 2012. And not just their preference, but we have to get them to turn out to vote.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, it's like sometimes climbing a slippery mountain.
It is.
What about women running for office in this year? What does your polling show? Do you think we'll see more women elected? What are the most onerous hurdles yet to cross?
So we see a record number of women running for office, particularly federal office, on both parties. And I think that we will definitely break, I think, a new record in the Senate, because we have some very, very exciting women and so many women running that even in these tough races, I think we're going to pick up at least a couple. In the governorships, one thing that is very frightening is unless the woman Maggie Hassan, who's running in New Hampshire, wins her governorship, we could end up, after 10 years of working to get women governors elected, with no Democratic women governors. We will have Republican women governors, but no Democratic women governors, and that's obviously extremely upsetting.
Why is
that? So there's still a big difference, and it's much, much easier for progressive women to get elected to legislative office than it is to executive office.
That's fascinating.
And then we start right again next year with our mayoral races, and we have 28 major cities that have mayoral races coming up. One of the earliest ones is the LA mayor's race in California, where a very prominent woman, Wendy Gruhl, is running, and it'll be very fascinating to see if we get a woman mayor for the second biggest city in the country, and then there are women running in New York as well. So our biggest cities may have women governors after next year.
Interesting, women mayors. Taking a step back for a second to the governors that you were talking about, is that because do women vote for women legislators more readily than women governors because the latter is seen as an executive position, an administrative?
That's right.
Aha. Interesting.
And some of the traits that people think about for women, and this is true for women and men, is your ability to bring people together, your ability to think through an issue, to come up with innovative approaches. Those are all things that people see more in legislative office. In executive office, they worry about women's ability to lead men, like the men in their state legislatures. They worry about strength and toughness and kind of executive ability. And so women have a much harder hill to climb when they're running for executive office.
I see. Yeah. Well, we've only got a little less than a minute, but just say a word or two on the wonderful research that you did for Name It, Change It, which is a project of the Women's Media Center that demonstrates that media sexism directed at women candidates really has an effect on the race. And that's your research, right?
That's right. And what we also found was that responding to sexism, don't ignore it, but respond to it, also has an impact. But we found that even mild sexism had really devastating impact on affect, how much you like the candidate, on the vote for that candidate, and on your perception of their ability to do the job. So we were stunned at how much impact sexist coverage had on women candidates. But we also found that responding to that coverage and taking it on, calling it sexist, having third parties call it sexist, showing strength and taking it on was a very winning strategy, which had not been demonstrated before.
Well, that's what we're doing. Listen, you take care of that cold, you hear? And
thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
You bet. November 6th, that's Election Day. It's about your education. It's about your health care. It's about your reproductive rights. It's about your fair and equal pay, your community, your future. People have been jailed for the right to vote. People have died for the right to vote. It's about the future of this country. Your vote counts for many things. Take control. Be a full citizen. It's your right. Vote on Election Day and help others get to the polls.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 gov.biz radio, a CBS station.
Congresswoman Maxine Waters is a force majeure. She is such an extraordinary energy center for progressive causes in Congress, for women certainly, for people of color, for the African American community, for her own district, South Central, LA, and for just all good things that you wish everybody in Congress was for, that we're very honored to have her with us today. Welcome, Maxine. Welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Well, I'm delighted to be with you, and thank you for that very, very generous introduction.
Well, it's true. I'm not even exaggerating. And I was saying just earlier today to a member of our team that we're acting as if everybody in Congress, we're in a state of ecstasy and denial. We're acting as if everybody in Congress were female and African American. So far the only Congress people we've had on the show is Eleanor Holmes Norton and Barbara Lee, and now you. And so it's my ideal Congress. Let's start, since the election is about upon us, with your estimation of how our ground organizing troops are in the face of voter suppression and all the work we've been doing to deal with voter suppression, get people registered, get the ID problem dealt with, etc. What's your take on how things look?
Well, I am pleasantly surprised at the progress that has been made by all of the lawyers and civil rights organizations, because actually we got started on pushing back on this voter suppression rather late. The right wing had introduced this legislation, gotten it passed in legislatures, and we caught up with this a bit late, but surprisingly, the courts have been doing relatively well in deciding in favor of voter participation and the right to vote, and recognizing that some of these measures that have been produced and passed into law in these legislatures were really measures designed to prevent people from voting and participating in the democracy. So, yes, you mentioned Ohio a little bit earlier, a good decision there, and several other places we've had decisions in our favor. So whether we're talking about voter ID or scrubbing the rolls and taking people off the voter rolls, or whether we're talking about cutting back on early voting days, we've been winning.
This is so encouraging. I mean, we actually are pushing back this time. We're not taking this one lying down.
That's right.
And it goes even beyond party, because it's the vote. It's suffrage. I mean, people have died for this, and the blatancy of the suppression.
It's almost unthinkable that this could be happening in 2012.
Yeah.
That we have poll taxes and literacy tests revisited in another way.
Yeah.
But that's really what it amounts to.
Yeah.
Efforts that have been thought through, that have been organized to keep people from participating, rather than what should happen in a democracy where we're encouraging people to vote and assisting them and making it easier for them to vote.
Yes.
We certainly were being taken backwards with those who thought that they could influence this election by keeping people away from the polls.
Yes, precisely. Well, it looks like the people are winning this one. I hesitate to be cocky about it, but it is encouraging. And what is your feeling about our ground game, as they would say, in terms of turning out the vote?
Well,
lots of people.
I have to tell you that Barack Obama has a really great ground organization in those pivotal states where it can make a great difference in whether or not he gets the electoral votes that he needs in order to win the presidency. Organizing for America is the organization that he put together right after the 2008 election. They have just thousands upon thousands of volunteers who have been connected to Organizing for America operation for these 4 years, and they have good numbers, lots of people that are on the ground and who are working it. So I am very optimistic about the ability to turn out the vote. And the other thing, I think many people really were insulted and became somewhat angry about the efforts to keep them away from the polls.
Yeah.
And I think that has spurred more a desire to be involved. So I'm optimistic that the ground game, that the volunteers are there to knock on the doors, to make the telephone calls, to assist people, to explain to people, and get them out to vote. I really do think there's a credible ground operation going on.
What do you feel about the congressional races and the senatorial races?
Well, I'm out here in California, and we're looking very good out here with all of our potential new members of Congress in some 8 districts or more. We have raised the money. We're putting in what is necessary to get these races. We're focused on from red to blue, and I think we have a real fighting chance of taking back the House.
Wow.
I think the Senate is going to remain in control of Democrats. Even if it is a slim margin, it is definitely going to happen. And so I'm looking very favorably and optimistically at the possibility of this country being led in the right direction, Democrats, by the House being in the majority, the Senate, and, of course, holding on to the White House. I believe it is possible.
Wow. Well, that if you believe, then it's very hard to not believe at the same time. I want to take a little lateral leap for a minute
Yes.
and get your thoughts on. We were talking with Barbara Lee about the recent Black Caucus focus, Congressional Caucus focus on women, and that a number of very interesting things had come out of that. Do you want to comment on any of those?
Well, no, except to say that African-American women vote in greater proportions than almost anybody.
That's right.
And I think that they're energized. I think that they understand what happens if this country goes in the wrong direction. It has been difficult with the subprime meltdown and with women who are older, who are unable to get connected with jobs. And so I think that women do understand that to the degree that we're involved and we're working and we are a part of that ground operation, that we have the opportunity for a much better quality of life with the election of Barack Obama than certainly with Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney and his team and his cohorts in the Congress of the United States have shown a great disregard for women. The comments that have come out of the mouths of some of them, the comments are totally unacceptable and embarrassing for everybody, whether you're talking about rape or freedom of choice. And so African-American women are not only concerned about the economy and jobs, but also about a freedom of choice and the ability to direct their lives. And so I do know that African-American women could possibly make the margin of victory for the Democratic Party and for the president.
I wouldn't be surprised. And also, of course, the voter suppression thing that we were talking about earlier, that whole campaign, everyone focuses on the fact, understandably, that the target was the African American community and people of color. Yes. But another target very much was women, because if you're a single mom with young kids, or even not a single mom with young kids, having early voting is a real gift. You can't always get to the polling place at a certain hour. The easier it's made for you if you're elderly, if you're disabled, if you're on welfare, if you're, there's just a whole lot of reasons that there's a special impact on women. And so I think women were made pretty cranky by the, on both sides even, by the effort to suppress the vote. I think
so. As you said, early voting days give you choices.
Yeah.
You can do some planning. And like you said, it may be impossible to be available on one day, November 6th. But if you can get there a week ahead of time, in some places 2 weeks ahead of time, and you can choose the day that's most convenient for you and your family, it certainly does mean that you have a great opportunity to participate.
Makes all the difference. I'm so grateful. We've got to go, but I'm very grateful to you for joining us in your busy life and your busy schedule, and keep on making the wonderful creative trouble that you make everywhere you go. It gives the rest of us hope.
Thank you so very much. I'm delighted to be with you this morning.
Thank you, Maxine. Bye-bye now.
Goodbye.
Mark your calendars. On November 13, the WMC Women's Media Awards will celebrate 5 journalists for their contributions. The recipients are Pat Mitchell, President and CEO of the Paley Center for Media; Martha Nelson, Editorial Director of Time, Inc.; Laura Ling, Correspondent for Current TV and Vice President of Vanguard Journalism Unit; Lisa Ling, host of Oprah Winfrey Network's Our America with Lisa Ling; and Sarah Hoy, all-platform journalist at CNN. To buy tickets and sponsorships to the Women's Media Awards in New York, contact mediaawards@womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 gov.biz radio, a CBS station.
Zoey Kotzambasis is the Vice President of the College Republicans at the University of Arizona, and she considers herself a strong conservative. She's a sophomore, she's an activist, and, wait for it, she supports both same-sex marriage, marriage equality, and abortion rights and reproductive freedom. So maybe she's the future of the Republican Party. We can hope so. In any event, here is Zoey Kotzambasis. Welcome to Women's Media Center Live, Zoey.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be on the radio.
You say this is your first radio interview?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. Oh, my God. It makes me feel like when I was born, dinosaurs walked the earth. But, well, I'm sure that there will be many more. Okay, you are Vice President of the College Republicans, tell me if I'm wrong, at the University of Arizona. And
Nope, that's correct.
Right, and you're a sophomore, and you consider yourself a conservative, but a conservative who supports both marriage equality, same-sex rights, and abortion rights, reproductive freedom. This is going in the opposite direction from where your party lately has seemed to be veering, including on the platform. Talk a little about that and how you came to be holding these opinions.
Well, I should probably clarify that I consider myself a libertarian conservative, because that's probably the more accurate label to describe my social views. I've actually always held those views on, gay rights and abortion, so nothing's really ever changed me. That's just who I've been. I think it's probably just because that's how my parents have raised me. And Well, I've actually found that's a pretty consistent view with a lot of my friends in college Republicans. Mm-hmm. So we oftentimes kind of joke that we're sort of the college libertarians, not really the college Republicans. But I've actually come to find after discussing the sort of things with my friends in the club, that since everybody holds that, we've kind of come to the conclusion that we find it more conservative to actually support gay rights and to support abortion and reproductive rights, because it means less government all the way around.
Well, that should be the case. I mean, that would be a nice consistency. If you don't want to intervene with regulations that might, I don't know, keep you from getting cancer from a bad product, then it also would seem consistent that you don't want to intervene in terms of who people love and how they love them and what they do with their bodies in terms of reproduction. But the Republican Party has not always been consistent on that. And are you getting flack from parts of the Republican Party that let's say the Tea Party extremists, the extremists in the Tea Party, or the evangelicals who take strong anti-abortion and homophobic positions? Are they giving you flack?
I wouldn't say our club's getting any flack for that, but after my New York Times interview, I did get a very interesting letter from a very strong conservative who wanted to discuss how my views were counterintuitive to humankind and everything like that. So, I mean, I've got a little bit of flack, but to me it's not a big deal. It's like, this is what I believe. If you don't like it, then don't talk to me about it.
Well, it's very principled, and I have to tell you that I am not a Republican. Okay. I'm a feminist, and that's a big word, which means. Do you consider yourself a feminist, by the way, since you're pro-choice?
I don't consider myself a feminist in terms of what people usually associate with that stigma. But I mean, I'm certainly, obviously as a woman who I'm hopefully going to pursue a career in law, I'd like to consider myself to be pretty much an advocate for equal rights for women and men, especially the workplace and everything.
I got news for you.
I don't call myself a feminist. That's not the most important thing to me politically.
Right. I got news for you. That's a feminist. You just define a feminist.
It's just not what I label myself because of the associations that come with that stigma.
I know. Yes.
And I guess it's not my first priority.
Right. It's interesting. Do you think that this is happening more with young people in the Republican Party? I mean, polls show in general that Americans under 30 these days are least likely to identify as Republicans. So what you're doing, I think, if it were a trend, would be very important, because I would like to bring back the Republican Party that I knew when I was a kid, which had people like Jacob Javits and Mayor Lindsay of New York, and there were really principled liberal Republicans. And the ERA, for example, was in the platform of the Republican Party for years and years and years until it got taken out. So this extreme right turn of the Republican Party is not good for any of us. It's not good for the Democratic Party or the electorate. Do you think that this can really, you and young people like you, can transform the party?
I think we're certainly trying. I've noticed, there's a lot of people that are in our club that are aspiring to hopefully one day become involved in politics, and I'm hoping that we can start changing that, because where we have to start, I think, changing the party is from the inside out. The Republican Party is not going to change from outside influences. It's going to just reject outside influences. So I think if the party establishment comes to realize that the people that are still supporting the party are changing and their views are changing, maybe they'll realize that it's kind of inevitable. And that maybe it's not such a bad thing.
What do you say when let's say an extremist comes to you and says, but you're calling for the murder of babies and hellfire and damnation and that kind of theological state? How do you argue back at them?
Well, luckily I haven't actually had anybody have to take that stance against me, but
if you're going to transform,
if you really want to argue about conservatism here, let's talk about what the core principle is. It's limited government and more freedom. Every conservative, every Republican spouts that whenever they're on a campaign trail, whenever they're on shows with pundits, they all talk about that. And I would just say, what's more consistent with that? It's not fair to take out regulations in, the free market and in the private sector like that, but then have government regulating what you do in your own home.
This is what we say all the time. It's like we're channeling each other. Yeah, that's all right. Now here's another question. What do you say when to me when I ask the following, which genuinely confuses me? So this is not meant as a gotcha question at all. I mean, it really is meant sincerely. Okay, you're for reproductive rights. You know that it's not only a human rights issue, that you have a right to do what you want with your own body, but it's an economic issue, too, because if you should find yourself pregnant and be unable to get an abortion, that changes the economic trajectory of your whole life, you know. Mm-hmm. So all these issues are intertwined. Okay, that said, how do you find yourself voting for a candidate, whether it's Romney or Ryan? Ryan floated the personhood of the fetus amendment. How do you reconcile those things, or the fact that in the party platform there's no exception to any for the life of the mother, the health of the mother, rape, incest, for there's no exceptions for abortions. How do you get around that if you're going to vote for them?
All right. Well, at first, I think that I'd like to say that, and my party is completely going to disagree with me on this. I think that liberals and Democrats have won the culture argument on abortion. Mm-hmm. I think that it's already been settled. If you want to talk about court cases, that's been settled. I think it's become such a big part of our culture, our political culture, in terms of, people advocating for women's rights, because it's more than just, the right to have a kid or not. It's the right to choose what you're going to do with your body. It's
exactly.
Issue. Exactly. Everything. And honestly, I don't think that any Republican policy, whether it's supposed to be instituted at the level of Congress or at the executive level with the president, I don't think any of that is really going to change what goes on with abortion. I think it's been legal for so long that it's not. I don't think those Republicans are really going to be able to change it. So to me, it's not a huge concern for voting, because I think that I think the abortion argument's already been won. I think it's already kind of, I guess, out of the picture for me as a voter.
Interesting.
And I mean, and I don't want them to change that. I like the way that it is with that stuff. I don't want those Republicans to change that. I don't think that they should, and I don't think that they will.
What? So you're going on trust, and on the fact that you feel that this is now an established part of the culture. I got to tell you, I wish I were as confident about that as you, because we've seen legislation eat away at it in terms of the so-called partial birth, what we call the emergency termination abortion laws. We've seen. Do you know that something like, I think it's 83% of all counties in the United States now lack a provider, and that's not because of anything the Republican Party per se has done, but it's because of what the extreme religious right has done in threatening and in some cases killing abortion providers. I mean, they've closed down clinics and they've killed providers. So there's a de facto narrowing of options for women, in particular poor women, in terms of the procedure. I wish I could be as sanguine as you are, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess to me it's just not as important of an issue right now as, say, fiscal or economic policies. And I think that for me is, I don't know, I think that the reason why I find economic and fiscal policies more important is because of my perspective as a college kid. Like, I'm going to be graduating in 2 years, and to be perfectly honest, finding a job that I'm qualified for and that I've been trained for, that my degree has trained me for, is a little bit more important than having access to an abortion clinic or something like that. And I think that's also because I know that in my community I do have access to that, and I would have access to that if I needed it. Right.
Unless, God forbid, you get raped and the laws have changed, But even as an economic issue, then what do you do with equal pay and the Lilly Ledbetter Act, which Romney has refused to endorse?
Wait, are you talking about just equal pay, like with the Lilly Ledbetter Act and all that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, equal pay.
Yeah. And this is actually really interesting that I read. There's actually a group of women that have worked for Mitt Romney. They worked for him when he was governor. They worked for him with the Salt Lake City Olympics and McBain and stuff like that. And they're actually touring the country right now. And they're all writing separate blogs talking about their experiences meeting women, because they're trying to tell women this is what it was like working for Mitt Romney.
Were they in the binder?
Probably. But yeah, that was one heck of a line.
Yeah, that wasn't a great moment.
Yeah, but they're going around and they're trying to share with women their experiences, saying this is what it was like working for Mitt. You know, he's a good guy. He's not such a great guy. I don't know exactly what they're saying.
Sure.
Or I'm not exactly sure what they're saying, but
yeah, no, they.
I mean, you know, his lieutenant governor was a woman who, and they both actually agreed to not take any pay when they served.
Yeah, I'm just asking about the policy.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all right.
Policy?
Yeah, the policy of equal pay, which is a different matter from that he was a nice guy to work with, you know.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. In my opinion, I don't think a woman is going to go around saying that he was a great guy to work with, but he didn't pay us enough. And I mean, if that is the case, then I guess that'll come out in their little tours or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, to me, equal pay is obviously an issue because I am a woman.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, regrettably, I am so young, and I guess probably a little, like, inherently a little naive about the workforce because I've just started my first job in college. I haven't yet had those experiences of unequal treatment in the workforce, but
you will, unfortunately. I'm afraid. I wish I could say you won't, but at some point you will. But I think you're terrific, and I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing, and I hope you run for office someday, Zoey. And I bet I just bet you.
But thank you.
I bet you just might. Thank you so much for being with us on Women's Media Center Live.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
That's it for this week. This weird episode of Women's Media Center Live. You've been listening to us on the web at WMClive.com, which also has podcasts of previous shows. I hope you do email us at womensmediacenterlive@gmail.com. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and for this program Executive Producer Julie Burton, Senior Producer Crystal Williams-Chancellor, Technical Director Michelle Kinsey-Bruns, Production Assistant Nora Eakin, and our founding sponsor Regina Kulik-Scully. I'm Robin Morgan from New York City. Next week, we honor women veterans, plus we have special surprise guests who will preview the upcoming Women's Media Awards. There's glamour, excitement, hello, and substance. That is, if the systems hold and we can get on the air and get on the web and get on with it. So join us next Saturday, 11 a.m. here at Women's Media Center Live.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 gov.biz radio, a CBS station.